All right, herpes. Let's talk about this one. For those that haven't seen my second viral video, which was put out after that first one that went around everywhere, quite a few people saw it. But again, that one was taken down within a day of putting it up, and I think it got to like 100,000 views or something before it got taken down. But I started that with, I thought, the best joke in the world, where I said that first video created quite a stir, and it turns out that a lot of people have herpes. The reason I said that is because half the messages that I got off the back of that first video, when I actually had the chance to check messages coming in, was like, dude, what about herpes? What about herpes? I've got herpes. What do I do? What about herpes? It was just like the number one question that came in after that video. And if you haven't seen it, it's online at tombarnett.tv. It's sticky to the top along with the first viral video. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. I thought it was funny anyway. And so today we're going to talk about solutions to herpes, because a lot of people continually write in asking for solutions. And I imagine that if you're in that situation, it's, degrading your quality of life. So while it's a bit of a joke and all that, it's obviously it's obviously something that needs to be handled for people to have better quality of life. So first of all, what is herpes? Well, herpes is essentially inflammation of the skin and or a mucous membrane. It's essentially what it is. It's why we get you blistering, you get a rash, you get things like that. That's all it is. So now you have to ask the question, why do we get inflammation of anything? Well, inflammation comes when we have something foreign to the body, or we have toxicity in the body that's embedded and we're not able to fix that naturally. We're not going through our natural stages of detoxification, or we have something foreign in the body, such as, or we're creating antibodies to things that our body's not breaking down. Either way, it spells we have toxicity in the body. We need to get rid of it. That's essentially what it comes down to. So the prime suspects or culprits in the little herpes saga are particularly the smallpox vaccine, which has been the cause of so many illnesses. Smallpox is what they put AIDS in when they shipped them all off to Africa and you took over all the African nations. Smallpox is one of those ones that if you could go back in time and not get AIDS, it would be smallpox. And other medications, particularly antibiotic use throughout the years. So other medications too, we'll get into that. Those are some of the main culprits. So we'll go into how we handle that. But the other culprits as well, according to, I did a lot of work studying Ogenus Vonderplanet's, his theories on a lot of things, and mostly because they were lining up a lot with what I was already doing, and people were suggesting that I check out his work. And I did pick up quite a few things from him that I hadn't considered before as well. And one of the things that he put forward was that it can be from an overproduction of adrenaline, which affects nerve endings. So essentially that goes hand in hand with what I was already putting forward, which is that there are hormonal imbalances. Now, what happens is when we produce hormones and our body's working well, the hormones run through the system. They essentially, if there's an excess amount, it causes residues, and those residues have to be stored somewhere. It essentially becomes toxic to the body. And one of the biggest, let's say just one of the prime suspects again, is adrenaline. Now, we overproduce adrenaline a lot in today's society. Our lifestyles give way to excess adrenaline when that's not cleared properly. So it runs through the system, it does its job, it gives us extra strength, extra clarity, makes the heartbeat faster, everything else. When it's not cleared, it leaves residues. Now and also we do that because we're in fight flight more of the time, where a lot of people are in adrenal fatigue because of the fact that our modern lifestyles are not giving us enough of the rest digest in the parasympathetic state. We're mostly sympathetic dominant. Well, anyway, most people are, not all of us. And so think about the act of sexuality, like the courting process and intercourse itself. Intercourse, don't I sound intercourse sounds very professional, but yeah, having sex with people, it's like there is adrenaline involved. It's exciting, isn't it? The courting process, the chemicals you feel as you get an attraction to somebody and you feel that reciprocated, and then moving that forward, however fast or slow that happens, there is adrenaline involved. So that's why it does particularly affect some of the sexual organs when we have in particular when we have We have herpes that are genital herpes. Just kind of trying to cut through my notes so I can cut down the amount of talking I do. What are some solutions? Well, from a diet perspective, you can juice yams. That does help to bring down or clear up some of the residues from excess adrenaline in particular. Yam, sweet potato, pretty much the same thing. Eating a lot of fresh pineapple can help. Now, that doesn't apply to everybody because not everyone has access to fresh pineapple all through the year or even at any parts of the year in some countries. So that's not make or break. It's just a food that can help. Anything that is cleansing in nature and detoxifying. I've got a lot of videos already on detoxification and also on lymphatic health. I recommend, if you haven't seen those, just go and search them on YouTube. Those haven't been taken down. It's pretty much, honestly, it's just basic detoxification, because no matter what it is, whether it's antibiotics, whether it's like any form of medication, or it's still just the same old answer, which is detoxify the body, make healthier and stronger all of the basic systems, and then these sorts of conditions go away. Similar to cold sores in the corner of the mouth, right? Some people just get them like one after the other all throughout the year. But why? Because mostly those cold sores are to do with stress as well. That's why people call them stress sores. So you've got to keep in mind that it's not just the fact that you've got like a virus that's like active or anything like that. It's actually caused by a number of other factors, and we'll talk about the transmissibility in a minute as well. But yeah, it's essentially detoxification, making strong the body. Stress weakens the body, so making strong, opposite of stressing the body. And then we don't have these outbreaks ever again. Last time I had a cold sore was like 2008, something like that. And I was at a stage having chronic fatigue and other conditions of getting semi-regular cold sores, but haven't had one since. I've kissed people with cold sores and don't get them. You know, it's literally when the body's working well, we don't have the breaking of the skin or mucous membranes in order for the body to purge. And also if we're overly stressed, we don't give rise to that happening as well. So same thing for genital herpes, exactly the same. What else really helps with detoxification that I talk about a lot is using things like bentonite clay, any kind of like healing clays. They work very well. You can put those in juices. You can put them in any kind of drink, even just use like normal water, mineral water, whatever, stir in some raw honey, make it nicer. But clay doesn't taste bad anyway. But clay helps to arrest some of these excess amounts of toxins. So go ahead and use clay drinks, use juices, just your general detoxification. Like I said, I've got several videos on that, as well as lymphatic health and lymphatic baths to help detox the body as well. So go and check those out. Now, I speak a lot about, man, this YouTube live's weird because whenever somebody writes something, it just like comes up over the whole screen. It's a bit distracting, but that's all right. Keep writing comments. It's good because people will pick up. By the way, little reminder, I love it when people answer each other's questions in comments. It's great. It's like a little community that you're all being part of, which is good because a lot of people listening to these lives have a lot of knowledge and experience in their own right and in their own ways. So it's great that you help people with that. You help each other out. I talk a lot about there being a high correlation between the physical and the metaphysical. So anytime that there is a physical ailment of any kind, there is a metaphysical counterpart. For example, well, mostly I'll give the example of, say, a parasite infection in the body. An overabundance of parasites in the body usually goes hand in hand with something that is like an entity of some kind that is also attached, a metaphysical counterpart, or you have a parasitic nature, or somebody else is being parasitic to you, whatever it is. There is something metaphysical to go along with it. Now, something else that I talk about is that in my experience, I don't know too many other people I've heard it from or they've studied it or whatever, but in my experience, the hormones are essentially the bridge between the metaphysical and the physical. So when I make diagrams, when I do workshops, I usually draw an iceberg with the water, and it's to signify that most of what happens is underwater. We all know that the bottom of an iceberg just determines, can't even talk tonight, determines its characteristics, right? It's not the tip of the iceberg. That's only a part of the part of what it is. It's not the main part. So when I represent that too, I say that the tip of the iceberg is the conscious, the underwater part is the unconscious, the unseen, the metaphysical. Now the waterline That is what I say to be the hormones, because to me, the hormones are the bridge between the metaphysical and the physical. It's the chemical reaction between the two. And so when somebody has, for example, hormonal issues that are leading to the body needing to purge that and create things like skin and mucous membrane ruptures, the herpes, some element of sexual something there in the metaphysical bodies. So mentally, spiritually, emotionally, there's something there around it. I've written here, there's usually issues around sex, an addiction to sex, possibly an addiction to lust, or anything metallic in that area, or anything that's gone to that area from medications or anything like that, the antibiotics. So there's an element there of needing to look at the mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies and the relationship to sex, sexuality, sexual activity, lust, and all those other kinds of emotions as well, or feelings, because they have a big correlation to issues in that particular area of the body. It can lead to other things such as impotence and in women, like the inability to create enough vaginal secretions for lubrication, and a lot of other things, early onset menopause, and a lot of different issues that go on. So I bring up this example a lot too, and people don't like it because they're Catholics. It's not putting Catholics down. It's just pointing out the actual statistics is that the majority of people who have cancer of the sex organs, prostate, testicular, ovarian, uterine, whatever, Catholics. And it's not a secret that Catholics in general are the ones that have a large amount of repression of sexual thoughts, feelings, and what have you. It's deemed bad and evil and wrong, Again, that's not putting down all Catholics. A lot of religions have that as well, but it's just a statistic that's true. You can look that up. So yeah, coming to terms with anything that's surrounding our relationship to sex and sexuality in general is a big thing to overcoming some of these issues. Now, then you'll say, but a lot of these people that get some of these issues are overly promiscuous. And they're having sex with a lot of people and a lot of unprotected sex, and that's how they catch herpes. But having a lot of sex doesn't mean that you don't have, or just because you're promiscuous, it doesn't mean you don't have issues. Quite often, it's quite the opposite. You have a lot of issues that are driving that behavior to be overly promiscuous and to engage in a lot of sexual activity. That's not to say sexual activity or promiscuity is wrong in any way. What I'm saying is you need to look at what is driving any kind of behavior, because it's just so important to do in all aspects of life. Now, where was I going with that? I think I had a point. I think I made the point. Whatever. I got to stop doing these after like 8 o'clock at night. I think I've said that before as well. Mostly, I think they pass antibiotic and medication use is one of the biggest thing. Now, are they contagious? We talk about, well, I have sex with a lot of people, and then I had sex with them. Now I've got herpes, and I didn't have it before. So for all the reasons I've gone through, that's what causes the herpes. Do you give it to somebody? No, you don't. You can't catch it, even though there's a viral element. There's a large element of it just being a detoxification. Now, as you've probably heard me say in my last video about this whole thing about viral shedding with the vaccine, and I said that a lot of it's got to do with a sympathetic response in someone else. Now, that I'm going to get into that as I expand on that. That's the next part of this little news broadcast. But to go along with this, to continue to handle the topic of contagions. It's not contagious. You can't pass it to another person. You just can't. You know this as well, because if you've ever seen, well, I've done a lot of tests with this, and there's a lot of situations where people have had sex with somebody with an active herpes infection and does not contract herpes. That happens a lot. Just think about this from a common sense point of view. If it was so contagious, would there not be everybody on earth basically who has sex, but everybody would have it by now? But it's not the case. Just think about that. If it was so contagious, and if you have herpes, you give it to somebody else, wouldn't everybody on earth by now have herpes unless they are a kid, never had sex before, or a eunuch, or what's the word when you don't have sex? Celibate. That's the only reason you wouldn't have it, because otherwise it would just spread like wildfire and everyone would have it. But that's not the case. It's not transmissible just because you have sexual contact with somebody else. So that's good news, because first of all, if you have that issue yourself, you're like, okay, cool. So it's my responsibility, and all I have to do is take care of myself better, and I'll clear it up. Also, if you've had it and you think you've given it to somebody, you can clear a guilty conscience because you haven't given it to somebody. What it is essentially we all carry a lot of similar stuff in us. We've all been most of us have been had antibiotics or whatever in the past. Most of us overproduce adrenaline most of the time. So what happens is when we come into contact with somebody who's going through some kind of viral detoxification or some kind of clean out of any kind, we can have a sympathetic response to that. Essentially, that means our body reads their body. Our body says, well, theirs is going through it, so it must be a good time to go through it. It's either a climactic condition, the temperature, the season, the light, whatever it is. Whatever it is, same reason seeds germinate and birds know when to fly south and all that sort of stuff. It's just something that is environmental. The way we're tapped into nature gives a signal to the genetic code, and then the genetic code says, great, now's the time to clean out for whatever it is. So when it comes to sexual intercourse, that is a really, really intimate, that's one of the most intimate things that we can do. And the connection to the other being is very, very strong. We resonate very, very closely with each other. So any kind of sympathetic response is going to be heightened under that kind of, during that kind of activity or under those kinds of conditions. So that's why if your body just goes, hey, look, I've got to get rid of that stuff too, and they've got an active herpes outbreak going on, well, then guess what? There's a good chance that you'll have the same if you need it. But there are so many people who have had intercourse with people with infections that are current, like outbreaks of genital herpes, and they don't contract it. It's because you don't contract it. The only way you can get it is to have a sympathetic response because you need it. There's something in you, something in your pain body, even you're talking metaphysically, something in your pain body relates to their trauma story. And then that is why you have that. Like I said, there's that metaphysical equivalent to the physical projection of what's going on. And likewise, as I said repeatedly, but I keep having to say it so it sinks in, it's the toxicity. It's the medications, it's the antibiotics, it's the how to clear that. Basic stuff I've gone through a lot of times. Everything I've mentioned so far, plus molded foods help a lot, particularly fruits like berries help a lot. And what else? Did I write anything here in my notes? No, I didn't give you any particular notes. But there you go. That can help so far. Now, moving on to, I can't believe I didn't even write notes for myself. So here's the solution. The question first is, hey, why do some people not get affected while others do? Same with the herpes thing. Why do some people get like genital herpes and others can just, go around and play as much as they like and nothing ever happens? It's not just genetics. It's not just, well, okay, you would say some people are genetically predisposed to things like that. That's true, but it's not just that. So what is the determining factor? I'm going to give you a few. 1, current condition of the body. How weak or strong is the current condition of the body? And I'll go back to that. 2, the state of the mind. How weak or strong is the state of the mind? 3, how weak or strong is the state of the spirit? That's pretty much it. Those 3 things will affect your ability to withstand anything, partly because of the ability to withstand anything, and partly because the strength of the reality that being is creating for themselves that is impervious to things like signals and other things going on. That's why when people say, I like how calm you are about this. Well, it's because I am calm. It actually doesn't bother me at all because I've gone beyond it. Am I like enlightened and floating around levitating? No. I'm still as much of an asshole as anyone else, and with as many failures and all that as everyone else. But I've grown beyond that. I don't buy into that sort of stuff, and so I'm not bound by it. Because I'm not bound by it, it can't attach itself to me, and therefore I don't have the same effects by being around a tower or by being around people who have, infectious diseases and all that sort of stuff. It's just not part of my reality. So that can be part of yours too. And like I say, the spiritual aspect of that is shedding the weight. It's letting go of the things that no longer serve you. And that's basically the solution, which nobody's going to really like because you're looking for a supplement to take. No. Surely there's got to be a device I can strap to my wrist and it'll protect me. It'll put out a force field and I can take this supplement, these mushrooms and stuff, and they're going to help me and they're going to protect me. None of that's going to protect you. Sorry to burst the old bubble there, but none of that's going to protect you. The only thing that's going to protect you is you. And part of that is your faith, you and your faith, your faith in all things. That faith, which I mentioned before, and I'm glad I brought it back up, works this way. The idea of the darker forces, the cabal, or whoever you want to call it, negative high frequency beings, if you want to call it that. All of these things are just the same words for the same shit. Doesn't matter how you label it. Their job is to infect your mind. Your job is to tend your own garden. That's pretty much as simple as it gets. Now, with that comes the reality that they own all of the sources of information. They write the books, they write the movies, they own the news stations, they own the social media stations. That's why people like me get deleted all the time and banned from making videos. So they have a monopoly on what goes into your mind, but that's only if you choose it. That's only one paradigm or one system on earth of the way that you can get your information. There's plenty of others. May as well handle this point now. The more you use a device like this and the internet and whatever, the less you will tap into the real natural internet, which is what the electronic internet is based on. They know this stuff. They know that all the information is there for you to tap right into. But then the more you go and use something like a device to use their internet, the less you will tap into naturally your own ability to use the real internet that's always been there and will always be there. It's like if you give yourself synthetic hormones, your body doesn't need to produce it by itself, so your body won't. That's why when people take steroids or take testosterone, they go into replacement therapy for the rest of their life because they can't produce it naturally. So the more you go, I'm learning heaps of shit on the internet, yeah, it's got a place, for sure, use it. But if you're reliant on that and using it too much, you will cut yourself off from actually accessing all the things that you naturally can access anyway. Now, what was my point? My point is that they own these channels. So it can be quite natural if you're not tending your own garden and accessing your own sources of information as to how the state of the world really is, to think that it's a dire and dark place, because that's what they put in your face. And if you're not getting your information from other natural sources, you will think that that's what the world is. Now, that is part of their plan. So let's go back to the physical body. How strong or weak is the physical body? Well, if you've been punishing yourself, you're overly stressed, you don't feed yourself the right foods, you're out of sync with nature, with your circadian rhythms, with your sleep-wake cycle, and your hormones and everything else, you are going to be more susceptible to any disturbances in the atmosphere. That's just how it is. Some people are so sensitive to things like lunar cycles and everything else, more so than others. Partly there is a disposition that you're born with. It's your, it's not just your disposition, it's your, I say the word all the time. For some reason now it's 8 o'clock, past 8 o'clock, I can't remember it. Your constitution, that's the word. Partly it's that, right? But that's only like potential. We develop or we pull away from our potential with the way that we treat ourselves. I say this all the time. People who are like highly sensitive to the lunar cycles, they blame it on everything. And it's like, yeah, but I know you stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning before you went to bed last night. And I know you just ate lentils yesterday thinking that that's a balanced diet. It's not just that you are highly sensitive being to all the stuff. You know, there's a lot where people just project all their problems and blame it on other things, and they don't take responsibility for what they are creating. So that physical health needs to be looked after very intimately. So we've got to be eating a good quality, balanced diet, not just like singular foods and cutting out entire food groups. It needs to be very clean. We don't want to be bringing in excessive amounts of other chemicals. So that means eating organic, growing it yourself. The water source needs to be good too. We can't be drinking town water and expecting it to be free of any like mind-controlled chemicals or whatever else. It wants to be rainwater, spring water, or, you know, like collected yourself. And then if you're really worried, then run it through a filter as well. Then the way that we treat the body, and I'm about to shoot my working in videos. I'm going to shoot it with a real camera and make an actual video out of it. And that's how to balance the way that we move, to balance the way that we emote, and that we do a lot. I don't want to get too complicated into it, but it's essentially how we move, how we breathe, and how we feel all at the same time. And that's how we can re-regulate or upregulate our system so that they're running very, very strongly and they're not depleting us. That makes for a stronger physical body. So does working out, but not working out too much. You know, there's a balance to all things. But essentially, it's grounding yourself, making sure you're connected to nature. And that's just from a physical sense. Make sure the foods are good and clean. That's pretty much as far as I can go into in the live stream for that. Then your like mental, emotional health. How strong are you up here? Because if you're fearing all of this stuff going on, you're already losing. that's how they win their battles, is the psychological warfare. They kind of hint to you at what they're doing even. Hey, we're going to spray stuff. We're going to put up towels. We're going to do this. We're going to bait everybody. And if you sit there fearing that and feeling oppressed by it, they've already won, because you are doing the damage for them, essentially, with your own mind. So people often ask me, they're like, how are you so calm about all this? It's because it doesn't bother me, because it's not part of my reality. My reality is created by me, and it makes me, I can't make too many claims with that sort of stuff, but let's just say that it makes me more impervious to that kind of stuff that goes on in the world. So we get to choose that, and that's really important. It's like our mind is our own garden. We get to tend that any way we like, and it's not for other people to spray with Roundup. We can keep that completely out of our mind when we tend it ourselves. So doing things with your life that are very life affirmative and dream affirmative. What is your dream? If you keep focusing on all the negative stuff in life, you're never going to reach your own dream, which you can still create. There's nobody stopping you creating your own dream. So if you don't know what that is, figure out what your nightmare is or your worst case scenario. That'll help you, figure out your core values. And then that helps you to determine your dream and work towards it. That's going to do more for you than almost anything else. It will make your body strong. It'll give you like a force field around you that protects you from all of these things that you're not protected by while you're buying into their narrative. You need to create your own narrative that protects you from a lot of this stuff. And spiritually, that's leading into the spiritual side, which is pretty much everything that I just said, plus having a lot of faith in who we are and what's going on. What put us here and why, our connection to that, our connection to a higher power, even if that's only our higher self, and a connection to the divine, a reverence for nature. All of this stuff is curable by nature.
All of this stuff is curable by nature anyway.